largest building in the world at the time falling on top of it.
Well, now,
So
let's talk about that.
it's apples and oranges here.
Okay.
Sure.
So there was some damage to Building 7.
Absolutely, from Tower 1.
And now NIST, do you know what NIST tells us about that damage from Tower 1 to Building 7? They say no significant factor at all. This building collapsed due to normal office fires.
Yes, that's what they say.
And in fact, the office fires, they say, were fully engulfed in the building, and yet we have no examples of large fires. 8 to 10 fairly small fires is what we have. The worst fires on video and photographic evidence.
Yes, Richard. But most of those videos were in a safe zone, correct? We couldn't get a lot of video evidence around the other building. That side was engulfed in flames.
Actually,
that's what the BBC documentary that debunked a lot of what you said had to say about that. We saw firefighters talking about that entire building was fully involved. I mean, that's a firefighter.
We do have videos from all around the building.
Yes, we do. We
north
have a
side,
few on.
There's a few small fires. The south side had a lot of smoke, but no visible flames. So we do, in fact,
when there's smoke, Richard, there's what?
When there's smoke, you would expect there to be fire.
Yes.
But the fire's not hot enough to have its flames coming out through the windows or visible behind the windows. Then it's a little bit suspicious. So that's why we're asking for a real investigation. Does it bother you that this building came straight down? Let me finish.
Sure.
Straight down as fast as a freely falling brick from the top of this building. This building crushes 40,000 tons of structural steel. Does that make any sense to you?
Well, I'm not an engineer that has designed skyscrapers.
Forget engineering. I'm going to drop a brick over here, and over here I'm going to drop another brick, and it's going to have lots of resistance. 40,000 tons of structural steel. Which one's going to hit the ground first?
I mean, I'm not
the
a
one
physicist.
Without any resistance.
Sure,
but this is 7th grade physics.
Sure. Well, I'm a high school history teacher, so physics isn't my expertise. But Richard, let me tell you something else that bothers me.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your support. 8E911truth.org.
Superheating to make steel disappear.
What?
I said it takes crazy superheating to make steel disappear.
Well, yeah. And in fact, there's several tons of molten iron found at the base of all 3 of these towers.
Right.
None of which is in the evidence of NIST or FEMA, and yet is seen by dozens of first responders. In fact, the World Trade Center structural engineer Leslie Robertson himself. Why couldn't they acknowledge that there was all of this molten metal? I'll just finish my point here. Because if they did, thank you very much, I appreciate it. Had they acknowledged it, they would have had to acknowledge that fires alone, which are only 15 to 1700 degrees, cannot possibly have created several tons of molten iron. Doesn't happen. But what can?
Let me
thermite. Thermite creates molten iron as its byproduct, and we have the chemical evidence of thermite in the dust, in the molten iron, and in the slag at the ends of the beams. Now it's your turn.
Can I reveal what reformed me? What really bothered me?
What really bothered you?
Larry Silverstein's quote, and how oftentimes we implicate, pull it. Sure, he was using some sexy language, but if you target the conversation, who's Larry Silverstein speaking to? And I saw you speaking about this briefly with the debate with Mark Roberts from New York. Who's he addressing then? And he makes it clear in that PBS documentary, he's talking to the firefighters. And if he says, and if you say that the firefighters are any way involved with the collapse of Building 7, you're in a dangerous position, my friend.
Larry Silverstein who said that. I don't implicate them whatsoever.
But he was having a conversation. He was having a conversation with the firefighters.
Well, let's tell the viewers what we're talking about. Larry Silverstein is having a conversation with the commander, and he says, "There's been such."
Nigro, was it?
I think so.
Daniel Nigro?
I think so. He says there has been such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it.
And he said, and they pulled it, and we watched the building fall down. You're implicating the fire department in New York, an organization that lost 300 brothers in there.
No, I'm not implicating them whatsoever. It's Mr. Silverstein who's implicated them.
But who's he having the conversation with, Richard? Can you just tell me that? Chief Daniel Nigro, the best decision is for us.
Yeah, but the firefighters don't pull buildings.
They pull operations out.
They weren't even in the building to fight the fire, though. That's the whole point.
Exactly, and that's another thing, Richard.
They weren't fighting the fire. They had given up.
That's another thing there.
So how could he pull them out if they weren't in the first place?
It would be unfair to have the conversation because 9/11 was a day of firsts. I think no matter what side of the coin you come on, we can admit that. 9/11 was a day of firsts. That's one of the first buildings in history that hadn't been fought by fires because when Tower 1 came down, it severed the lines that brought the sprinklers down.
Yeah,
no
indeed.
sprinklers were cut,
That's true.
except in the bottom floors. I think there were some sprinklers going on
I think
there.
it was the bottom floors that didn't have sprinklers on the
But
top
that
floors.
building wasn't being fought. I mean, all the other buildings have sprinklers going on everywhere.
No, I agree.
They're waterfalls.
I agree. But fire would have brought the building down, if it brought it down at all, because it never has a high-rise steel frame
We
building.
can't use that as a
But
control.
it would have brought the building down asymmetrically, not straight down through the path of greatest resistance. Let me make one more point.
Sure.
In order to bring a building straight down, you have to cut all 24 core columns, in this case, within a fraction of a second of each other. Otherwise, the building tips, and it didn't do that. It's great to meet you. I really appreciate talking to you.
You mind if I get a picture of you, sir?
No,
because I mean, I've
You got a camera?
Right.
All right, let's do it.
Okay. And
Here we
I'm
are, by
just gonna-
coincidence, in
yeah.
Washington, D.C.
I mean,
Fellow JREF-er.
it's a. I did JREF a little bit. Mind if
I bet you do.
shake?
And unfortunately, we're going to catch an airplane.
Okay.
So, what's your name?
My name's Kevin.
Kevin,
On the
good to meet
JREF Forum, I was the debunking director.
The debunking director. Awesome. So unfortunately, we've got to catch an airplane. We're going back to Berkeley today. We've been speaking with the debunking director at the JREF Forum in front of the White House. What?
It's kind of coincidental that you're all here today.
It was very coincidental. We got to have a nice conversation. I wish we could have more, have lunch together. I would love to. But we're going to have to catch this plane, and thank you. It's great to meet you, too.
Likewise.
Okay.
Careful there, Richard.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. You too, Kevin. So we'll catch the airplane, and we'll keep going. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I'm from Sydney, Australia, and I think it's all a cover-up, and I think it was all planned, and I think we should find the truth eventually, hopefully.
What's your name?
Andrew.
How do you play your left hand?
I don't want to give that.
Okay.
Thank you.